That was a mistake for anybody who is a swimming instructor. I actually went to one or two, I don't remember, swimming lessons,
Okay.
and not a single time somebody asked me about my story and how where I like what is my relationship with water.
Yeah.
And because of that, we just went straight into like learning to swim. And I'm thinking, this is so wrong. Like somebody's teaching me something, but they don't even realize that what's going on in my head. We should probably sit down for an
Oh
hour
yeah.
or so, and I should like explain to you what I'm struggling with,
Yeah.
why am I struggling with this, and how important this is for me to overcome this particular fear, not this particular thing. So, for example, one of my biggest fears was just simply being in the deep end. Okay,
Yes.
that was like something that was massive milestone for me to overcome, and that didn't come up once. It was all about front crawl, put your
Yeah. Hand
catch
here, head
properly,
here, your
yeah,
legs here. Yeah.
entry,
Hmm.
kick, spend at least 1 hour on kickboard,
Yeah.
like on your kick. And I'm like, this doesn't matter. Like, why do you ask me about doing my kickboard drills where I'm still afraid of going to the
Going over.
water, you
Yep.
know?
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
that is so important.
Yes, yeah, and that's the first thing. So whenever I have an adult that approaches me or we offer the sessions, so when I was at the facility that I was, I'm no longer there, but we used to always find out information about them first, and then I would then be prepared also for the lesson too, to be able to bring certain techniques for that time. Otherwise it's a waste of a lesson really, unless you're really good at thinking on the spot, but you still need to be
Yeah.
planned and prepared. um and the first thing, if there was somebody that was really anxious in the water, they would tell me that they were scared. I would always ask them first, tell me what happens between the ages of a baby and 7 years old, because there would 99% of the time there would have been something that had happened in that age time for them to not and to be fearful
Yeah.
now and in this period, this journey of their life. So I already knew that it was because of something, and then I would then, well, can you tell me a little bit more? Because sometimes, you may feel as though, you either may feel a little bit embarrassed, or you may be thinking, well, if you talk about it, it sounds a bit stupid, really, but it's not, because it's trauma, and
Yeah.
anything can bring that back to you. And it might not necessarily be something that's happened in the pool. It might be something that you've even sort of pinpointed it to that, even though you weren't pulled down underneath the water. It might have been that you may have slipped and fallen and fell in the swimming changing facilities, and you just at 3 years old just thought, well, I didn't like swimming because I fell and hurt myself, therefore you didn't like
Yeah.
going swimming. There's always a reason. um
There are many. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Well, and then it's, so I'm known to actually teach a swimming lesson from a washing up bowl.
Okay.
And if I help you with your breathing, then I know that I can. Then the rest is absolutely easy peasy lemon squeezy. But then it's also knowing. So two main things that adults struggle with is, one, breathing and putting their face down, or the fear of being able to get up if they're getting a bit anxious. So to be able to stand up, basically. And that's what we work on, because even if you're teaching them how to float, which again is obviously a safety thing to do, to learn onto the float, if you don't feel comfortable getting up, then you won't want to float. So it's simple, really. So those are the two things that we work on right away, and then I actually don't do too much swimming. We do a lot of aqua moves, so a lot of walking, running, side steps, sitting and doing, sitting on noodles and using noodles a lot. So you don't actually do a full-on front crawl action at all with me until
Good.
I know that you're ready. And I
Good.
think if somebody is watching that, is that you don't need to have an adult swim right away, unless of course they're showing you and asking you, actually, no, I want to do this, then you do it. But
Yeah.
But then you can say to the adult, I would really recommend that we work on this first and explain the reasons. And then they're like, oh, okay, I get it now. That's why you're asking me to
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
I thought when I was, because I mentioned to you before that I am self-taught in the end. I just watched a bunch
amazing.
of tutorials and then practiced.
Yeah,
And what I came to my conclusion was that although I wanted to swim front crawl and like be a proper swimmer, I realized that this is not absolutely necessary to be able to say I can swim
right.
and then use in practice in real world. So in real world there are practical skills that are necessary to learn that
Yes.
have nothing to do with that breaststroke or front crawl.
Yep.
They are simple things like how to stay afloat,
Yep.
how to turn around,
Yep.
how to you know well,
Lift your
one of the
head
things is like,
down.
yeah, have to
Yeah.
lift your head, like turning around. So I found because you see, I always all my life thought you have to get from A to B, right?
Mm.
And then what happens is you get to B and you realize that you have to turn or
Yeah.
you have to do something that is out of
Yeah.
ordinary, like just A to B,
Same
and
way.
you
Yeah.
panic because just like I don't know what to do now. I have to,
Yeah.
or like to like stay in one spot. Like
Stop.
for
Go
example,
again.
I'm not talking treading water. I'm
No, no,
talking
no, I know.
about just being in one spot.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Yeah.
how do I do this? Like,
Yeah,
how am I in the
absolutely.
one
Yeah.
spot? You know,
Yeah.
what
Which
do I
is
do
why
now?
it then comes down to if I move this way, this is the implicate, this is what happens. Or if I do this, this is what, this is,
Yeah, but you need to
so
play. In
yes,
order for this to happen, you need to play.
absolutely. Yes.
And that's
Yeah.
what I started doing. And like I do this to this day. I'll tell you something really funny. So I do play quite a lot. I would just like instead of measuring my time and like how quickly I go, I would either just for fun go underwater like kids. I
Yeah.
would go underwater, play, see what I can do. I try to then instead of using my hand like this, I would spread
Yeah.
my palm and just
Brilliant.
like start
Mhm.
playing with my
Yeah.
hands. Like what can I do?
Yeah.
And then I came up with this. Let's see how slow can I go?
Yeah.
And I just go this slow. This is not slow enough. I go
Yeah.
even slower and
Yeah.
just like try
Lovely.
to see how slow you can actually swim and
Yeah.
still like
Yeah.
go move
Move.
forward.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
it's very slow. You can
Yeah.
go very slow.
But if you go really slow, what then happens to your legs if you don't move them? They
Well,
go down, or what does
I
my,
learned how to keep my core and stay
yeah,
flat.
yeah,
Um, but maybe my core is pretty strong now, so I can actually do
it
that.
is.
But my point is that where I was going with this is that you can use less effort
Yep. Oh, for sure.
and get
Further.
further.
Get further,
But
yeah.
for some reason, we keep thinking that in order to swim, you
Mm.
have to kick the as
Oh, yeah.
hard as you can and push as hard as you can, and that's not the case.
No, 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 no. Because I would all, I mean, most recently when I was working with adults, is that I would show them how you would need to be gliding with your arms rather than doing really short, fast strokes with your arms going over the water. Is that you would need to again slow it right down, and you're focusing on what you're doing, because when you're doing this, you're just doing it motion. Yeah, if you're actually slowing it down, you're thinking about what you're actually doing. So you actually think about pulling through the water as opposed to just
Yeah,
moving through the water. But I love the fact that there's not many people that would explore like you did, because I would ask them to do that myself.
yeah,
Because then, if say for instance, if they were pushing off out from the wall, so we've worked on obviously turning around and pushing off. But if they went too deep, or if they came too shallow, I'd be like, well, you need to now explore what are you doing with your body in order. Why did you go deep? Or why were you too much on top of the water? And
hmm
it's better for you to learn that way, which is why we come back to the children being told constantly, you know you've got to do it this way. No, you're doing it that way. No, that's wrong. This is right. If they
Yeah.
learn it themselves, like you have proven, is that you've learnt more
Yes.
because you're doing it yourself and exploring, you're feeling it. And then what happens is that it's called muscle memory. So then your brain remembers that feeling. So
Yes.
you know next time, actually, if I did push off this way, I'm pushing off in the right, in the more, the more fluid way, as opposed
Hmm.
to not understanding why that's happened. So I know it's brilliant that you did that, because again, when you're doing this, how does that feel with the water going through your
Oh,
fingers?
it's so much
You know?
fun. It's
Yeah.
so much fun. I love it.
And that's what children want to do too. And because we're taught now we're adults, well, why are you acting like a child? But we
Yeah.
still like playing, we still like
Yeah.
exploring. And I
Do
think,
you know what I started doing? Just one more thing to add.
yeah.
Uh, I wanted to see recently if I can um, do breaststroke
Mhm.
without moving my legs, and I just like I was like a plank of wood
Yeah.
just with my
Yeah.
and it worked, and I was
Yeah.
able to do like 50 meters back and
Absolutely.
forth, no
Yeah.
problem,
Yeah.
without one time moving my legs.
Brilliant. And that's hard to do, so well done you. No, and it's good because then you're working different muscles as well, and you're breaking it down. So, that's what's really important too, is that I always say that there you've got little pieces of the puzzle and then we put it together. But in order to focus on, there's so much things that you have to focus on as swimming, and people don't
Yeah.
realize until you're an adult
Sometimes
and
too
you're
much, like they
relearning.
ask you to start counting,
Yeah,
I'm just like,
no,
no, no, that's too much. But
no,
there's a question that I wanted to ask you, and I'll be probably asking more and more people, but because you also have background in sports science, it's going to be
yeah.
interesting to know. um, so there are two types of people that always say these things.
Mhm.
One says, I'm so skinny or so muscly that I'm negative buoyant and I just sink.
Okay.
People say that. And I want to find out if that's the case and if there are actually people there that cannot float. And then you have people who are overweight and say they are not fit enough to
Brilliant.
be able to swim, which I know is wrong because I've seen overweight people swimming like
They're
crazy
brilliant.
and they're amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.